Good morning and welcome to episode 9 of the Vickery Holman at Leisure webinar series. This is the season 2 finale as we head into the summer, and it will be another busy time for our support cast of operators and advisors who cover hospitality across the Southwest. My name is Michael Easton and I'll be chairing our series today. For Vickery Holman, I look after the hotel and hospitality agency business across our offices in Bristol, Plymouth, Exeter and Truro. Today we're joined by a very experienced team and I'll let them make their own introductions. If I can start with you, Sammy.
Good morning, I'm Sammy Corrigan from Pentillie Castle. We're on the banks of the River Tamar, the Cornish bank, and we run the castle as a private hire and events venue, lots of weddings and family sort of group holidays. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Sammy. And because I can see it in the order left to right, if I can move over to you, Deborah.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me, everyone. My name's Deborah Heather. I'm the CEO of Quality and Tourism. We work across the UK as an accreditation body and in Europe as well. Delighted to be here.
Thank you very much. And then last but no means least, John.
Morning, everyone. My name's John Marquis. I'm the founding director of Pollocks Pubco, based down here in Charlestown. We've got a small group of hospitality outlets, including probably best known for the Long Store. We're growing a business down here with a family foundation.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to let you go for a second, and then we'll bring you back in one at a time after I've done a quick market review. Thank you very much. For those joining today, please feel free to ask any questions of myself or any of our panelists. There's a dialogue box, as I can see, is already being used on the right of the screen, and we have Leslie Anderson at Hedgerow Marketing who's administering that. I'll try and keep an eye on it, but my multitasking skills aren't fantastic for anyone who's sort of logged into this before. So as we look to what we're doing today, we do record it. It will appear on YouTube over the next 24 hours, and you will be sent a link which you can distribute if there's parts that you think is worth sending out. So in terms of a market update, for those that have joined before, you'll be well aware of there is still very much a lack of available stock in the market. This has certainly been contrary to expectations for quite some time. And this has been coupled with a surge of activity and buyers keen to get into hospitality, particularly in the Southwest, which has given us new lows in terms of available stock and new highs in terms of values achieved for hotels, venues and holiday parks in particular. I think at the moment, if we follow on from our last session, there's been a slowing up of what was quite a frenetic market last year. And more caution, I think sensibly this is a result of war in Europe and then a rising cost of living, which we're all obviously more than well aware of, and particularly in the hospitality sector. We found there was a lull in April and May, although that has come back a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I guess you have those that are looking for sort of short-term gains. I think they're sort of holding fire at the moment, and we're still getting interest from people that have got more of a medium to longer term view. And what was a sort of a trickle of new opportunities, this continues, and we think that will increase as the year goes on. We're mostly seeing the longer term operators looking to make exits, having gone through quite a difficult time, but for some of them just seeing that there's life outside of their businesses perhaps. We're very active in the hotels and hospitality market, particularly in the professional advisory side of the business. In the last year we've provided advice to just under 200 operators on either rating advice or valuation. If there's anyone on the session today that has a requirement in that field, certainly feel free to contact us. So today we'll be looking at venues and the food and beverage market with the best in the West, I think. And where better to start than with Sammy Corriton at Pentillie. Sammy, if I can ask you to come back on and join us. Get the old microphone there, Sammy.
That would be good, wouldn't it? Sorry, I'd let the side down.
No, we all do that. Don't worry. Welcome. And whilst we're used to, to speaking to some sort of experienced long-term operators, I think you probably take the prize for longest term ownership at Pentillie. Could you give us a bit of a background for those that don't know Pentillie, just to understand where you are and the heritage, really?
Yes, absolutely. So the pictures that I think you've got on screen there show you a fairly good indication. That's an aerial shot of the castle with the pool that looks very nice in the foreground, and the river, which is my personal pool, in the background. And whilst I was off screen, you had a little view out of my, well, this is one of our meeting rooms actually, that gets used for all sorts of activities, including lunches and meetings. But my dad inherited the castle in 2007, so we're in an incredibly fortunate and probably rather unique position in terms of inheriting a ridiculous, massive house and some land on the Tamar Valley. It is a very special place. We had no experience of hospitality as a family before that. I mean, I had experience of going to places, and I used to work in hospitality, but cooking, but not in terms of running a hospitality business. But the place was so special, we thought we really ought to give it a go as a business. We, with inheriting the castle, we also had an inheritance tax bill of about 5 million, just under, which wasn't insignificant, but we had to work our way quite hard to get over that little bill.
Sure.
So we decided to open as an exclusive private hire venue. We also did Country House Rescue, so we featured on that as a TV program, a Channel 4 sort of mainstream program. But as a direct result of that, we had a lot of people wanting to come and stay. So the private hire thing was suddenly sort of usurped in favour of bed and breakfast, because we had all these bedrooms free during the weeks when we didn't have weddings at weekends, and so it suddenly seemed like, well, we should accommodate these people. So we ran a pretty successful bed and breakfast for a number of years until the COVID. And we don't do that anymore. But that's that's a brief snapshot.
Talking about the COVID, we're all sort of trying to just say let's put it behind us, but I mean you would have had probably quite a different experience, although many in hospitality obviously had challenging experiences. Venues at their very heart are about group experiences, which were pretty much the first to go and the last to come back, really.
Well, we closed the doors, I think, like everybody. I think in some respects it was almost easier. We had a definitive rule. There was no, you couldn't open, so you just shut the doors, and that was it. And it was very black and white. And I think for us that was probably, actually, I think I'm very grateful for that, because it gave me a chance to stop. And I ran the place with mum and dad, so that was actually really lovely to have some time to reflect and to pause and to look back over the past, gosh, what is it now, 10, 12, no, we opened in 2009, so at that point it was 11 years, and go, what are we doing? Is this working? Is this right? A really good look at the books, and rather than just fuddling along and having a lovely time and welcoming people, and in some respects there's a horrible phrase, but it's very useful here, busy fools, we were able to take stock and just go, actually, what are we doing and how can we make this better? And I think having the benefit of time with my children, they're only little, they're 6 and 8 now, so they were 4 and 6. We'd had a nanny who'd helped massively, so my husband and I didn't really ever see children much during the week. She was there 8 until 6, and actually that's a long day for little children, so they will never look fondly back on the days of homeschool, and I definitely won't. They nicknamed me Mrs. Drunchbull, who's the horrible headmistress in Matilda. I wasn't very kind. But yeah, I never want to go back to homeschool, but it was a wonderful opportunity to spend more time with them and actually to appreciate the house and the gardens to ourselves.
I mean, it's funny because
in that respect.
I'm speaking to other operators in the sector. The good ones, similar to what you're saying there, were very much, let's review the business we run right now. What changes can we make? Where are we making money? Where are we wasting money? What do we need to do to streamline? I mean, we've certainly seen that a lot in the sort of the food and beverage market, where they've reduced trading hours just to get some quality time back.
Absolutely, and I think that's really valuable and valid, isn't it? Because actually those people who work in hospitality really don't have much time to themselves or their families, because it literally is 24/7. So I think that opportunity to pause, reflect, I hope lots of people are taking stock and doing things, making things a bit easier for themselves.
Yeah. So how's that reflected? You've gone through coming up 2 years at the time of forced restriction. How are things looking this year now that we're back unrestricted? Was it a case that all of those bookings that you had prior have all sort of moved into this year, or is it how's it looking on the ground for you?
Well, the first thing we did was we stopped doing bed and breakfast, so we did have to ring a few people and cancel their stays, which wasn't great in that first summer, when we were allowed to open July the 4th, I think. But because there had been a bit of uncertainty and our B&B bookings didn't come always that far forward, that was relatively easy and wasn't so hard. Managing and moving wedding bookings was really challenging and not fun. In the main, everyone came out of it wonderful, wiser, more brilliant, more grey. But that we've managed to, I think we've got one more wedding still lurking, that's due to happen later on this summer. I think that lots of things change. They have babies, time to move on. So yeah, a wedding will happen, I think, in September, which is our last hangover from the COVID movements. But basically, everyone was amazing, and I think we were all in it together, weren't we? So it was a huge change for everybody, but lots of being adaptable and trying to be compassionate and kind. And we didn't always get it right. We did make a couple of mistakes for which I regret, but you make what you think is the best decision at the time, in terms of cancelling and sticking to your policies and your terms and conditions, and then ripping them all up and rewriting the whole lot. But I think it's certainly been a learning experience, and I think out of it all, we just need to remember to be kind. And remember that how you would feel in that position, and not always make the business decision because that's what it says on the piece of paper, but try and be
you've got to balance it. I think you're right. You've got to be human at the end of the day. And that will always pay you back well.
One hopes.
It will. It really will. How are bookings looking for this year? I'm guessing
it's good, actually. Well, and if the airports continue and the airlines continue to not be able to get staff, I think it will carry on being good. I'm looking at your poll that's over here on the right, but certainly the castle is big, but it's not too big to make it completely unfun to be here for a holiday. So you can fill. We sleep 22, so families and groups of mates can generally fill 22 quite. It doesn't take long for 4 families with 2 or 3 kids each, and you're sort of done, really. So it's worked quite well for us at the moment. I'm not sure quite what next year will look like, because we'll definitely sit at the higher end of the market, but perhaps that will be protect us. I don't know whether people are making savings. And perhaps not holidaying so much, or not holidaying. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what the forward projections are actually for 23 and beyond. I think that will be an interesting time.
In other companies, we seem to be getting a feel that the market's separating a bit, where people are more than happy to pay for quality, or they want budget, and it's probably that middle ground again, where maybe that's a little bit of a harder. The sort of the day-to-day can be a little bit harder, but I think so long as you have a strong product, we've called it for a couple of years, it's the value for money, and that isn't about, it has to be cheap. It's about, have I got what I paid for? And I think we've got a venue to begin with, such as yours, and presented in the way that you do. If you get that with the, the service that people want, I think there's definitely, you'll be strong. And I suppose as a business, you're in maturity now, aren't you?
It feels like it. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that we just need to carry on doing what we do and do it well, and make people have lovely times, and keep our fingers crossed. But it's everyone around us as well. We're not just an island in terms of being in a business. If we're doing well, that's all well and good. But if there's no one who can support us with now catering or wedding suppliers or those sorts of things who aren't able to carry on, or local pubs and restaurants aren't able to support what we do here, because we bring in caterers now for a team. Our chefs, both, one had left just before COVID and the other decided he wasn't coming back in the kitchen ever again. He was going to go and work outside, which is totally fair enough. And so we didn't re-recruit. We now use other local catering companies, which is also fun. I guess we're supporting other businesses, but it's making sure that all of those can keep going, and they're there to support us, because actually it's all well and good us being here as a little island, but that doesn't work either. It's the holistic, isn't it? It's absolutely making South East Cornwall amazing as well as the rest of Cornwall.
Perfectly reasonable. I'm going to change topic a little bit, because I'm mindful that Deborah Heather, who follows us, and time is always against us. But I know Deborah's going to talk a little bit about sustainability. Now, mindful that you're in, a heritage property. What does sustainability mean to you, and have you put anything in place that is sort of following that agenda for the future? Is there any help you need to sort of implement some of the customer demands that we're seeing, where people are looking for a more sustainable hospitality experience?
We've always tried quite hard to be as to be energy efficient, to be all the sort of general tick boxes for sustainability, whether it's recycling and all the other sort of obvious things. There are a few challenges with a heritage property. Double glazing is impossible. But we keep the windows repaired and we keep the seals up to date and replace them regularly so that we can be as draft free as possible. But I think sustainability for me also has another bigger word. We obviously sit in the middle of the estate, so there's managing the woodland, there's managing the grasses, there's managing the farming, there's managing how we operate as an estate, and there's a long way to go in terms of how the farmers manage their fields, but they're long-term tenants, and I can't wade in and go, we need to be organic, and we need to be regenerative, and we need to be this, and stop using sprays. But I can gently encourage, and I think for me that's about educating myself as much as I can. So I spend most of my time not really running the actual hospitality business at the moment, but looking at farming practices and looking at tree health and looking at replacing trees on the estate and that sort of thing, but equally being a sustainable member of a community and part of a local community that can be sustained. So paying well and keeping people employed, and looking to recommend local businesses as much as we can to our guests, so that we sit within a community that is sustained and can be sustained and can continue to be a really great little pocket of Cornwall that isn't as busy and frantic as the rest of Cornwall most of the time, but is just as beautiful, I think. But it's got to be a bit more holistic. We have a wood biomass boiler, but at the moment I'm worried that the wood is coming from places that it shouldn't be coming from, and perhaps isn't being farmed as sustainably as it should be. So how can we make that better here? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally understand. Thank you. I'm going to just hop to the poll before you go. So we've had a bit of audience participation in there, and it seems as though a bit of a mix has come up as the clear winner of UK and abroad. I think it's a question of, if you stood in a queue, if you've gone for guaranteed sunshine and then had a guaranteed queue, either at Easter or last week, whether you might feel the same again next year, or whether that impacts on you making a booking this year in the hope that perhaps the queues will get better if you want to go abroad. I don't know what your feelings on this. I wonder, some of the news with how difficult it's been to get out of the country, whether that's probably a benefit to the southwest overall, where people think, well, you know, the worst is I'm going to sit perhaps in my car in a queue on the M5 or the A30 or the A38. But yeah, I don't know what you might think as to.
I think we've certainly benefited as the world opened up post the two various lockdowns, as in groups coming to holiday here who would definitely have been holidaying in their second homes in Mallorca or I don't know, wherever they might have gone. So yes, that certainly was a huge benefit for us initially. And yeah, I think that will continue because this part of the world is absolutely gorgeous. And I think Cornwall, Yorkshire, the obvious sort of holiday destinations within the UK will always benefit from bad queues at airports. But I don't know, I think the COVID has been probably hugely beneficial for discovering other parts of the UK that we may have overlooked in favour of getting to ourselves to an airport and going to Spain. But yeah, I literally just came back from a week last night, as you know. I missed the rehearsal yesterday in the Scillies, and honestly I don't know why anyone would bother going to the Caribbean when you have those crystal clear waters, the white beaches, and a week of sunshine, where I think it was pretty miserable here. I'm not sure quite, but I haven't caught up with everyone yet. But yeah, I think the UK has a lot to offer, and we will be holidaying in the UK a lot more.
Fair enough. Sammy, thank you. I'm sure that we'll have some questions, so I'll come back towards the end of the session on those. But if I can just say thank you for the minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No problem. And if I can invite Deborah Heather back on screen. Hi. So I can duck out now because I know that you've got a fair few things to work through. So I'll disappear and come back once you're done.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to go through the bits of introduction to quality and tourism. We said hello in the first place. It's fair to say that I am a bit of a data nerd, and that's what I kind of wanted to talk to you about today. These are not my stats, and I hope you can see this properly. These are the stats that BVA BDRC have looked at from a consumer perspective. They have gathered various different data. They did it all the way through the pandemic, and they've just come out with their April stats in May, which are really interesting. And actually really plays into the conversation that Sammy and Mike just had. So from this hopefully you can see it, and I will send them around if anybody wants them afterwards. Basically, it's looking to see how many people had actually traveling abroad, were planning to travel abroad, had booked flights and booked accommodation. And if you can see this last figure on the end here, you can see that we're back up in April 22 to the levels that we were in February of 2020. So there are signs of recovery in terms of people going outbound, but it's not up to pre-pandemic levels. And the comfort levels around confidence and things like that for consumers in this area remains really low. It's the risk of the paperwork that you might have to do around COVID, catching COVID, the hassle around different countries having different rules in place. So consumers are still slightly wary, although there is that thing about running to the sun that Mike has just mentioned there. We've also got to couple that with the cost of living crisis. So everybody has felt the pinch a bit in terms of their own pockets and how much cash they've got available. And the war in Ukraine is having an impact on confidence. So arguably, people are also slightly more used to taking holidays in the UK. Go back to Sammy's point, really starting to appreciate what we've got on our doorstep and really utilising what we've got locally. I'm just going to go to the next one. So this is about flight booking and search behaviour, and the yellow line is the searching behaviour. So you can see lots of people are searching at the moment at this point in time, but they're not booking. It's not translating to booking as much as it has done in the past. And you can see these are nowhere near up to the levels of pre-COVID. So booking levels are comparable to February 2020 again, but they've not recovered. The looking levels are recovering, but not translating to bookings. And is that partially due, we could say, to all of the stuff around the airports, the airlines, all the queues we're hearing about, and the airline issues. And of course, we've got the cost of living challenges again. The next one, UK holidays and paid for accommodation. So September 2021 and paid for levels proves that we were desperate for holidays post-pandemic or during the pandemic, in between all the lockdowns and the pandemic. People were really desperate, but you can see that the impact of new variants that came out in December time, but actually really looking hopeful of that purple line is going right up in April. So people are starting to book. And I think that's one thing we have learnt, and we're hearing a lot from our customer base in the Southwest particularly, is late bookings is much more of a thing. I think last year people wanted to tie down that booking to make sure they got a holiday. Well, this year, some people have done that. You know, there was a bounce in January. Some people have done that because they're maybe obliged to go at a certain time of year, or they have their favourite booking that they really want to make sure they get a hold of. But April seems like, you know, we're maybe turning a corner. And it potentially reflects what we're seeing in the marketplace: late bookings, cautious approach, terms and conditions around price and cancellation policies. People have a lot more to consider when they're looking to book, and they're generally more savvy. And actually, I think there is an argument here around, are we displacing business in the UK? We all know Cornwall was rammed last year, Devon was rammed last year. Is there a displacement? Because, you know, we've got this problem with outbound air traffic in terms of the experiences at the airports and the airlines. That will work inbound as well. That will be people wanting to come on holiday to the UK. There's also been Eurostar issues and things like that. So our inbound potential market will be affected equally as much as our outbound potential market. And from that means that the UK starts competing with itself. So destinations like London are pushing to the same people that might book Cornwall last year. And also, where we were very, very crowded, are people thinking that, you know what, I'll do that at a different time of year. We might have flattened the demand period. We have yet to see that, but there's certainly some indicators around this. Out-of-home activities, yeah, as I said, this is not my research, but I think it's really interesting that you can see people are locally, there's a really strong demand for restaurants and pubs and clubs and cinemas and all of the things they want to do to have a happier life and to do and to enjoy things. So fingers crossed that looks like a really clear picture for those of you that are in venues like Sammy or with restaurants and pubs, that you know, there should be consistent demand from both a local audience, so local tourists, day trippers, all of that sort of stuff, and or people coming into the area. So it's really strong. This is probably the strongest market alongside attractions. It could, as people have pointed out, be strong because we've got more money in our pockets because of lockdown savings, and that could mean a slowdown later on. But you know, fingers crossed, this is the way we're going to continue. Finally, visitor attractions. Now, this is an interesting win for one part of the sector for me, and these are outside attractions. Outside attractions, at one point, that was all we could do. So obviously, you know, they made hay, and we all enjoyed it. And actually, what they've done is managed to convert people to really enjoy outside attractions much more. So they've managed to build on that whole market penetration where they were managing to expand through COVID, but actually they've now established themselves, and actually it's a really, really strong area. So strong recovery for this part of the sector overall, with almost normal participation levels. The only part of the sector that we're seeing this across the whole tourism sector, and they'll benefit from a cost of living crisis simply because basically people take more day trips rather than they take overnight stays, then they're going to have the local tourist market as well. So what can you do? So the factors that are influencing consumer buying decisions. So obviously we've got a cost of living crisis. So you have to think around your local or your extended market and the people that are traveling to you. And there's also this trust, risk and reputational issues that came from a few bad apples last year, unfortunately. So we had people that really did profiteer, and it all went in the press, didn't it, when people were profiteering on rate. And then there was overcrowding issues in certain places. Your T's and C's, I can't tell you how careful you need to be with your terms and conditions. Go back to what Sammy was saying about being reasonable and human and all of that sort of stuff. They essentially have to be fair. And people have heard this bad press. They've seen all of the bad stories. So they are listening to that, and they're more savvy when they're buying. They're looking for flexibility in your offer. And also there is an issue around, obviously we had staff shortages, we had COVID kicking in at different times. So perceived poor service or value for money back to that point, which is really just weighing up what they've spent against what they've received. The other thing is that space, outdoor space and outdoor options are still really high on wish lists, so don't underestimate. And one of the things I would advise you, any of you put any actions in place for COVID, don't unpick them, use them. People still want them. I know we don't always get the best weather in the world to have outside activities, but if you can, just keep them, because they're still really attractive to people. So in terms of operating solutions, what I would recommend to you is that you have fair and consistent pricing, and you're really transparent about your offer. So make sure your websites and you're really are up to date, and you're really clear about what you're doing. By all means, reduce your menu. Reduce your menu. We know things are costly, so reduce your menu, manage it as best as you can. I think with table bookings and attraction pre-bookings, you could think about prepayments. I would probably recommend it. People have got used to that as a policy. They've realised they can't just walk into places anymore. I've mentioned it before, fair T's and C's, and look at your hospitality offer. And in this, I we're many of you will know, we accredit and we look at star ratings, and as Mike said, we do a responsible, ethical and sustainable accreditation. But one of the things in quality for me is think about your customer. If your 5-star standard says you have to do a 24-hour room service, even if your customer doesn't want that, then that standard is out of date. So don't think about what somebody else is telling you to apply to just because there's something called a common standard somewhere. Think about what your customers need and what you will deliver for them. And as long as you're transparent to them, then hopefully that helps you manage the whole limited staffing, the cost of service, that sort of stuff. I've said about not unpicking things like outdoor space options and COVID standards. And, really, when you come to cleanliness, the COVID standard cleaning stuff is exactly the same as norovirus. So you really should be doing it anyway. But what I would suggest is any technical efficiencies like the pre-bookings and booking initiatives that you've put in place, keep them. Don't unpick your tech. Make it work for you. Make it work where you've got staff shortages. And really, as long as you are very clear on your offer, then the customer can't ask for more. So reasons to be cheerful. And again, I can't really tell how clear this is for you, but 2022 is looking okay. It's not too bad. It's better. It's not where many of us thought it would be, but I think the industry has changed enormously because consumer demands have changed a lot. But if you look at the projections over the next few years, this is really going up. This is a report by Statista, who are specialists in all sorts of different gathering of information and collating it, amalgamating it, and then producing these reports. But you can see that demand is keeping increasing, and I think that's really important for you to keep in your minds. Now, I'm sure Mike and his team don't attract people that are not embedding great standards or quality or any of those things. You're passionate hospitality people and tourism people, and therefore this you won't be offering a non-authentic product. But I can't stress how much this whole network of local suppliers that Sammy was talking about, sustainable actions, ethical employment things, how important they are to your reputation. And those are the things that you will be judged on. And if you can keep along a trajectory like this and you keep growing going into the future, then it all bodes well. And Robin has put it in the messages in the chat, but I did say I would put a slide up. There is still time to apply for the Tourism Awards in the Southwest. Really, what a way to celebrate what you've achieved and think about what you've done and recognise the people in your business. Please do look at the deadline, 19th of June. It's not far off, but still plenty of time to get an entry in. And I'd really encourage you to do it. There's nothing like momentum in terms of being recognised and keeping getting better. And I think there's lots of award winners here as well, or already attending this webinar. Just a little about QIT. I'm not going to bore you with it. We're an accreditation body, as I say. We do star ratings. We do Safe, Clean and Legal, which was recommended by Which during the pandemic. And we operate a scheme called Responsible, Ethical and Sustainable Tourism, as well as some wellbeing pieces. So if you're interested in talking to us, do give us a shout. Mike, I'm coming on to my last slide. I think you were going to do a poll.
So for everyone's benefit, we do a comms check before we start every session, and we tell all of our guest presenters, this is how you get on and off stage. And the fact that I can't do it myself is humbling. Deborah, thank you. You're right. We were running the poll as you're talking there. I think you can probably see the results. I think it's come out on top. It's likely to be a strong year. I think that's probably quite right. And I mean, I'm sure you're seeing this yourself. I think all of the operators accept that last year was the exceptional year and the one not really to be used as the yardstick, because nobody was really expecting that to happen again. And of course, it sort of came at a cost to a certain extent in a certain number of areas. And most of the guys we've been talking to, they're comparing to 2019. They want to see something that was pre-pandemic that gives a better gauge on where they are right now. So I think that probably tallies to what you were saying there in your presentation as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what has changed, and that would be great to just get back to 2019 and get some stability in the marketplace, and then to grow from there would be amazing. I think what we have seen, though, is a difference in what consumers expect, and that's what people need to be really mindful. I think you said at the beginning of our conversation when you were first talking to Sammy, I think around, the good operators took time to think about it and to think about what they needed to do, and I just encourage them to do that as much as they can, because actually this is about future-proofing their business, their market, their market penetration, and that's the opportunity now.
I think the interesting one to watch is where last summer, the Southwest was full and we had forced closures. So that was quite difficult for those that were coming down and in the region wanting to eat and drink. Where we're completely unrestricted this year, we obviously still have quite a lot of pressures on staffing.
Yeah.
And we have operators that have, made the decision to run shorter sessions, fewer sessions, and how that might look for the summer ahead. I think in the round, it's probably made the customer more aware that they have to be more prepared.
Definitely, and I'm seeing the good operators actually do that. So especially when you're in self-catering or something like that, they're really communicating well with their customers before they come down to make sure they've understood that they really do have to make a booking. But also, it's something I live in Devon, so it's probably not the best comparison, but it's something we're experiencing at home as well, isn't it? If we want to go out for dinner, you have to pre-book. You can't just walk in like we used to. And I think that's a trend across the country, as well as in other places, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up with John. So actually, I'm going to let you go. Thank you. Okay. And maybe I'll ask you back at the end if we've got some anything that's come through on the chat. All right.
Okay. Super. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, John. If I can ask you to join me.
Absolutely.
You did that. You did that really effectively and efficiently, John. Well,
we'll talk afterwards, and I'll show you how to do it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us again today, John. And just to kick off, could you perhaps give us a bit of an overview about Pubco and where you started and what you got going on at the minute?
Yes, so we, myself and my wife actually started the company in 2013 with our first site in Mevagissey, the Shark's Fin. We moved down from London at that point, having previously been in Australia for a few years. We were pursuing our dream of owning our own company. Couldn't afford anything in London for obvious reasons. And I'm actually raised in Cornwall, in Flushing over near Falmouth. So sort of came back home. My wife's American, and I don't know if you know this, but the green card process over there is arduous to say the least. So that wasn't an option for us. So it was Cornwall or America. America couldn't happen. So Cornwall did, and we're really pleased we've made the move back. Not looked back since, really. So the Shark's Fin was a brewery tenancy with Sun Austral Brewery. Is an accessible way for us to get into the market. We made a pretty quick success of that, and have grown since. At the time, our second site was the Golden Lion in Port Isaac, which we've actually since handed back to the brewery. But those two sites are sort of pub related, hence the Pollocks Pubco company name. Since then, we've moved towards more full service restaurant type operations, and actually we're looking to review the company name going forward. And yeah, so we're based here in St Austell. We actually live in St Austell. Charlestown being one of our favourite little areas down here, and we used to walk into Charlestown regularly and think how nice it would be to have a restaurant. And fortuitously, one of our regular customers at the Shark's Fin was developing their shed in Charlestown, which has since become the Long Store, Short and Strong Cafe, and the wine store underneath. And that was a really big change for us. And yeah, we've progressed well since then. Really making our headquarters Charlestown, and branching out from there.
Thank you. So America's loss was our gain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're right. Fully enough, it is a misnomer, the Pubco, because I do see you as a very much that sort of food and beverage in that order.
Yes.
Full service. With what's gone on over the last couple of years, were there any sort of enforced changes that actually you've decided to adopt going forward? I'm particularly mindful because you are quite reliant on probably the table service is probably the biggest one. Whether there was table ordering, how you've managed that, whether that's been quite helpful in a funny sort of way to the business you got.
Yeah, I mean, we had to make the major adaptations around outside dining. I think what that forced us to do was to look at ways we were underutilizing our outside space. Actually, all of those adaptations we've maintained and built upon. But in terms of the sort of the app-based stuff and the really restrictive side of the COVID rules, we've tried to walk back as many of the ones that we feel get in the way of the customer experience, but also double down on those that perhaps can benefit us going forward. And that's certainly the tech side of things, much more organized bookings and algorithms within the booking system to optimize table seating, etc. Has all remained, and I think it sort of forced our hand to upgrade in that department, and we're really pleased we have. It's made a really positive impact on what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a useful way to manage your business much more effectively. Are you charging deposits for bookings? Because that is not the new thing, but that's certainly a growing part of the industry, and probably better for it actually.
Yeah, and I fully understand why a lot of people do that. I think we're kind of lucky in a couple of ways. That obviously we're tourist related in many of our sites, and we're coastal. So what we've found is, whilst we take bookings, advanced bookings, obviously for all of our sites now, which we didn't do before actually, but we do now, we tend to be able to refill cancellations at fairly short order, in part through the tech, which picks up waiting lists, people who are on waiting lists, but also through walk-ins from being in busy tourist areas where you're going to actually have people trying to get into restaurants that haven't been able to. So what we've found overall is applying too stringent a booking process for people and sort of non-refundable deposits and things like that has acted potentially as a barrier to people committing to that booking. And until it becomes a problem for us, like a real problem for us, I don't think we would pursue that. We like people to have flexibility and to be able to feel that they can book in without being held to it too tightly. Although I think our customers are pretty respectful, which is why we haven't been forced to do that. Yeah,
no, that is interesting, because funnily enough, we get a sort of different response depending on where you are. So, I mean, for example, we're talking to some operators in Exeter where it's more of a thing, and it's almost made easier by the fact that if everyone's doing it, you're going to do it.
I think there's definitely that, but I also think in somewhere like Exeter, the likelihood of people are planning ahead because it's a busy place. If you pull out last minute, the chances of someone stumbling through the door is that much lower, because obviously there are far many more doors to stumble into, but also it's a bit less intense. I think that down here in the tourist centres, you end up with dozens and dozens of people searching quite desperately for tables. So we're in a slightly different boat, I think.
Yeah, no, that's interesting commentary. I've also, it's funny you say about how your reputation can be potentially tarnished by being what might be perceived as the bad guy, charging deposits. A few of the systems out there, in effect, it's the booking system that's taking the deposit or charging the deposit, rather than it feels as though it's the venue name to sort of, it sort of weakens the idea that it's the restaurant itself that's handling it. But I think it's coming forward, and it's interesting that you say you've obviously got quite loyal and responsible customers coming in. And actually, you're right, you've probably got to leave a certain percentage of your sites open for walk-ins, because you are, particularly Charlestown, that is a big day trip environment, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings me probably nicely round to staffing. You've got to staff these busy venues that you've got, and staffing's been, really in the headlines the last year. What's been your experience?
Well, it's a mixed bag, really. I mean, I think 2019, pre-pandemic, we were, it's always been a challenge, to be fair. But we were doing as well as anyone, I guess, and managing to staff all of our critical positions without too much difficulty. Obviously, the pandemic mixed things up a lot. A lot of people left the industry, and a lot of people, I suppose, with more time on their hands, sort of discovered other parts of life that they could potentially pursue if they weren't in the hospitality game. Having said that, we've seen people come back since. A few of our ex-employees actually had left due to the uncertainty of the pandemic and wanting something different, and have since come back. I think partly due to a lot of the COVID opportunities outside of the industry have closed, the ones that they had gone to, but also missing the buzz of it. And I think this year particularly, we're starting to see a return to normality in terms of the day-to-day rhythm of a hospitality gig, instead of it being so intense and just batting off issues and complaints from people who can't get in and are frustrated or whatever. That sort of pressure that our guys don't really need. It's starting to recede a bit, and the old rhythms of busy weekends and slightly quieter weeks, busy holidays and slightly quieter work weeks is more appealing again. So we've done okay. We had a panic at the beginning of the season, unsure as to whether or not this would be another 2021, or maybe not quite, but something really punchy where it starts at Easter and doesn't stop till October half term, with almost no ups and downs in between. We quite quickly realised after Easter, in fact even during Easter, that it wasn't going to be explosive like it was in 2021, and that we could all sort of, rather than planning to fight fires, we could plan to build for the long term. And I think our team feel that, and that they all seem more comfortable.
How were the team after the double bank holiday?
Well, buzzing, really. I think, like I say, earlier in the year, we were all concerned we need to build this big team, because when it comes to things like double bank holidays, that's when we saw staff throw their hands up in the air last year, because, it's a double bank holiday. We've just got, just been really battered. And now it's Monday, everyone should be gone home and it's busy again. And how are we going to live like this? That hasn't happened this year, which is good. We've had an amazing Jubilee Weekend, but it's receded again, and it's nice and calm, and we're able to build again into this weekend. So the staff are good. They really enjoyed it. It was obviously a big uptick. It's a good view forward for us to have a flavour of how the season's going to be, the summer's going to be. So we're definitely viewing it positively.
A bit of respite. Were there any differences between your venues? Because ultimately you're sort of quite coastal with a lot of your venues, but then you've got Truro as well, the city venue. Do you see much difference between, the numbers that come through the doors in?
Yes, absolutely. All of our, one of the reasons we moved to Truro actually is to try and flatten out our wild upswing in the summer and downswing in the winter, particularly of our really coastal venues. Charlestown is sort of an ad hoc hospitality centre of St Austell, really, so it does better than you would imagine in the winter. But Mevagissey, for example, Newquay even, and what was Port Isaac, they were so seasonal. In the summer, you could hardly take every person that came through the door, and in the winter, were not many people around. So Truro was one of the reasons we took it on, is to have a good winter trade somewhere, to work alongside our Charlestown restaurant, which does really well in the winter as well. So we find there, when you look at the graph of trade rhythms, Truro is a lot flatter, albeit with a pretty big spike in December, and a gentle a gentle drop to the middle of summer and a rise again through the winter. So our peak trading is winter based, really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't suffer like the others do in the winter, in the summer. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's good. The Jubilee weekend was good for it, but not insane like it was for the others.
Totally understand. And what's the outlook for the rest of the year? Any plans that you can share with the group, or is it you can just talk about operations? You don't have to talk about what you might be doing.
Yeah, I mean, so firstly, my thoughts on the year ahead. I think we're going to have a really good summer. I think people are too far down the planning route, and people are too excited to enjoy their summer. I think the winter is where we're going to see the impact of this cost of living crisis potentially. And I think we're going to have to review and just make sure that we're trading at the right times and not trying to flog a dead horse at the wrong times. I think it's going to be important that we pick our moments to trade. In terms of plans for this year, we've expanded fairly quickly, I suppose, and I think we've got to a size now where we're going to have to consolidate our head office and build a team and build some systems that are able to take the weight of further growth. So I think there'll be a year of consolidation minimum, potentially two, where we really get our systems in line and get hold of this thing in a slightly less ad hoc, hard work based. I mean, we've grown fast, and we're a family business, and we've tried to take on everything ourselves with half decent success, but I don't think we could take another one without falling over, probably. So, yeah.
That's fair enough, John. Thank you. That's really interesting stuff. I'm going to looking at the time, so we've got just under 10 minutes left, but I'm not sure whether we've answered every single question that the audience would ever want, or the audience aren't listening, or just haven't got any questions to ask us. But I'm sort of looking at the chat poll. I'm going to give an opportunity as I'm talking. Anything. There we go. Thank you, Leslie. Last chance to put in any questions, because we've got an experienced group of people here for anyone that has plugged in today, and we're more than happy to try and answer any questions. I was thinking a bit, actually, John, of what you were just saying, just in terms of maybe the winter, what that might look like. I think generally, because from if you like, the food and beverage market, because we saw quite a lot of sites change hands last year in the sort of rush west again for some people that in effect wanted to come out of other industries, take on a pub, restaurant, bed and breakfast, what have you, in the southwest. We've got a lot of new owners, and a lot of new owners maybe putting in different ideas to the ones they inherited, and I think that may be quite challenging with the winter ahead, because there is this great thing of goodwill, isn't there, in our industry? If people understand your brand, if people are aware of your brand, they're more likely to come and visit you. Whereas I think we've got a few sites which probably have gone through a bit of a transformation in very short time. I think with your natural growth, I think people have actually they've trusted you along the way, and certainly that never guess who was your starter. It's probably Charlestown, where you suddenly said, right, this is what we're about, which is probably why it's gone so well in Truro. But I think I think the guys that are already in it, with Sammy again, you've got goodwill there, you've got high visibility, whereas it's probably the new starters over the last sort of 12 months or so that I think haven't quite got their audience yet, and potentially have sort of maybe moved away from what, if they inherited the business, what that business was about and wanted to make changes, they're perhaps losing the audience that were at the venue at the time.
Yeah, quite possibly. I think I know a few people who have started hospitality businesses down here during the pandemic, and my main concern for them, I suppose, or certainly my main warning to them, would be not to fall into thinking that that's how it'll be forever. I mean, I think they'll probably know that now already, but obviously, having been in the industry my whole life, we know how it is, particularly down here in Cornwall, and just to be very mindful that summer's where you make your hay, and in the winter you need to make sure you're looking after all of your, the quality of your offer, and the consistency of your delivery and your opening times and all that sort of stuff, so that people are able to build a full picture of what they can expect from you. I'm seeing quite a trend for sort of more lifestyle-based businesses down here, where smaller restaurants that do really lovely stuff, but certainly pick and choose their moments on when to trade, which is kind of a COVID adaptation really on the hospitality industry as it's been in the past. And we're a bit old school like that. I think we try to maintain consistency so that it's very clear what we are and when you can have a part of us, really.
That's fair enough. There is a question that's come through. Thank you. Are you finding it pretty much essential to be pushing offers and deals? I mean, our experiences, we've been seeing less of that, but I don't know what your thoughts of that are.
Yeah, we fortunately haven't had to go down that route yet. I suppose it's something we'll sort of look to in the winter perhaps, but we're just trying to make our offer as compelling as possible for the type of people we're seeing wanting to dine with us. Yeah. Making sure we're taking all the opportunities to look after them when they're here. I think, I can't really add much more to that. We have happy hours, particularly in Newquay, but again, it's about the consistency. We started the happy hour thing up there 3 years ago, and it's just grown every single year, and people now rely on it. But in order to market it hard enough to have everyone know about it quickly, that's a really big thing to try and do. So again, the consistency really is the main thing for us, of quality, of offer.
I think you're right in that. I think I was going to go back, Richard, who asked the question. I think, from my perspective, casual dining sector with the sector where you would see all of these offers and deals, and that sector is littered with those that sort of hung themselves by their own petard, really. And I hope that's actually, I can understand a happy hour offer. It's it's a reasonable way of doing it because actually you're quite in control of that cost, and it's quite a low management cost as well. But I think when it actually comes to the kitchen and to the food offer, I think it'd be nice if we can actually say perhaps we can put that behind us. I mean, it's a competitive environment, but ultimately the discounting guys, it's sort of proven that it wasn't a particularly sustainable model. Right, John, can you stay on the screen if that's okay? And can I ask Sammy back a second? Hi, Sammy.
Yes. Hello.
Right, I'm going to sort of pick up something that Michelle's come in with. Cornwall Council is a landlord and we're obligated to seek to rise rents on behalf of the taxpayer. Hooray. We also need to hear that costs of hospitality are rising. I'm not quite sure. Actually, I'm reading that. I'm not quite sure what Michelle's question is. Does that make any sense to you? Apologies.
Sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of it. Michelle is a landlord with Cornwall Council, is that correct?
Yeah, I think Michelle's from Cornwall Council. That as a landlord, they're obligated to seek to raise rents on behalf of the ratepayers. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. Also need to hear that costs of hospitality are rising. Comments. Yes, the cost of...
Michelle, do you want to shed any more light?
I think you're probably following the fact your costs are rising. You have to pass that on to the customer. We don't do it for fun.
No, there is definitely a need to increase prices, isn't there? I don't know if it's a rents of property and therefore the costs of perhaps more John, as in his rents are going. I don't know. So yes, our rates, rents, costs, everything are all going up, and it's a question as to how much you pass on, I suppose. Or maybe we take this question in another direction and finding accommodation for staff. I don't know. That's also a rent, isn't it? It's just, we also rent out a few properties, and they're all to permanent residents rather than to holiday lets. But
I'm going to further that. I'll come back. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. Cafes pay us rents. They are making lots of money. Yes, you're right. I think cafes are making lots of money, Michelle, but ultimately they're also having to buy the product, increase the staff load,
pay their staff more.
I think it's not just a case of they can just open the door and it's going to come in and the profit's going to fall out the end. I think there's quite a lot of challenges for sites getting busier and busier, and quite a lot of increased cost, appreciably increased customer. I'm just going to move. Sorry, you can tell I'm really good at multitasking, so I am just going to try and if I can keep you on screen for a minute, Sammy, as well, and see what we can do. So, how would you like to see DMOs assisting hospitality businesses during the recovery period? Now, I had to look up DMOs. It's destination marketing organisations. Does that ring any bells with you, Sammy and/or John?
Yes, definitely.
What's your thoughts on that? Thank you for coming in, because you can probably help us here, but I'll start with Sammy if that's okay.
I think DMOs, from my perspective, would be like Visit Plymouth or Visit, the sort of regional promoting people, and I think they definitely have a position to play in terms of helping the area and region and market the region. And I think certainly we have great benefit of being part of Visit Cornwall here, because Cornwall has done always an amazing job in promoting the region and entering their awards themselves. But then we have to be an active member of Visit Cornwall and support Visit Plymouth as well, because otherwise how dare we expect to get promoted by them as and when there's an opportunity for them looking for a venue or a space to recommend to their audience as well. So I think it's about being an active participant in all of these things, and perhaps therefore, I think it sort of plays both ways, doesn't it? You will be marketed if you also help support them, either from our point of view being a venue to host an event, or just supporting them in their activities. So sharing what they're doing online and sharing their social media posts. And sometimes life is so busy you forget to do these things, but then you pay the price. So yeah, I think DMOs are really important, but I think that you have to participate in them to be able to reap the rewards.
Thank you. Did you have something on that, Deborah?
Yeah, just to say, I mean, the more modern view is it's destination management organisations, so they'll be doing the organisation of traffic and all of the infrastructure and all of that sort of stuff in the county as well. And Sammy's right, Visit Cornwall will do a really good job, as does Visit Plymouth. But actually, I think the role they could play is to bring direct bookings. It's to stop the OTAs, particularly where it comes to accommodation, having such a strong hold on this and these huge commissions they get, which just go straight back out of the counties.
Thank you very much. I don't know if our audience is being particularly cruel, because I had to push people to ask questions, but everyone's putting in acronyms that I'm seeing for the first time. So I'm now looking at ESG. Can anybody shed any light on ESG?
Environmental, sustainable, and governance.
Social governance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yes. Got any thoughts on that?
To what extent do you see ESG effect? Oh, I think it's just, it's wildly important, isn't it? It's like it's not even a trend, but it is a bit of a trend. But it's environmental social governance, it's sustainability, it's the same, isn't it, really? It's about looking after your people, your place, and your product. It all comes as a whole. You can't do one without the other any longer. So you can't ignore the environment and chuck your rubbish without sorting it. You've got to be all things to all elements of it. So yeah, and looking after your people is really crucial. Without them, you have nothing.
I think, Sammy, you were talking about it when you use local caterers and things like that, and I'm sure John has to think about it in terms of procurement and for food. So yeah, essential part of the business, and actually both of you being in Cornwall, it's kind of part of the DNA of Cornwall actually. So rather than anywhere else in the southwest, it's a stronger feel of part of a Cornwall visit.
I'd agree.
Thank you very much. And talking about looking after people, I think maybe I should look after you three and our audience. We've just gone over our hour now. Thank you again for participating in this. It is appreciated. It's just great, excuse me, to get a view from others involved in what is the wider hospitality sector. So I'm going to sign off now, only with a comment to say, if there are any questions that people haven't managed to get round to, or if they've got any for anybody here today, feel free to drop me a line initially, and we can distribute that. And again, thank you, our presenters, for joining us today and giving up your time, and thanks for the audience. I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.